you and welcome to my garage and makeshift table. Today I have a very fun video to make because we're setting up a toad enclosure. Specifically an American toad enclosure because that's the one that I have adopted. The setup should be similar to an enclosure for most other terrestrial toads, so if you don't have an American toad, this should still be helpful. And disclaimer, this is less of a tutorial but more of an example of what a proper American toad setup should look like. The things that I'm going to use today are a Tupperware bin. I prefer plastic containers over glass tanks because they help keep in the humidity better. I also, for a substrate, you can use either Eco Earth or Cypress mulch. I'm using both of them and you can do that too. You're also going to want a water dish and dead leaves and moss. You can get fake moss or real moss. I'm going to use real moss because I have some in my yard, and also any other decorations you want to put in there. So we should obviously start out with the container because it's going to be the enclosure. And you want to drill holes in the top or sides or both like I did for ventilation. And make sure it has these locks on the edges of either the lid or the container so that the lid doesn't happen to pop off or the toad squeezes out and escapes, because that wouldn't be good. Now let's add our substrate. I'm going to put the Eco Earth in first. I need scissors to open it. I'm very smart. You're going to want just enough so that there's not too much and there's not enough room or height for the toad to hop around, and so that you can fit your decorations in there. But you also don't want too little because toads like to burrow in to the substrate to cool off and create sort of a subclimate for themselves, and they also like hiding a lot. I think I'll put a little more in there. There, now I've got a good layer of dirt on the bottom, and if you're using just Eco Earth or just mulch, I would recommend adding a little bit more so that the toad can almost completely submerge their body into the substrate. But I'm adding Cypress so it'll raise even higher. You can get this stuff at pet stores specifically for reptiles, like name brand, but it's a lot more expensive, or at least it was for us, so we just got some garden stuff at Home Depot because it's less money for a lot bigger of a bag. There we go. This will help keep the humidity in the soil. There, now that I've got a pretty deep layer of substrate, it's time to go on to decorations, or otherwise known as furniture or enrichments, all that good stuff. First, I'm going to add a water dish. I like to place it in the corner to make room for other stuff, so we'll just place that right there. And you're going to want to use dechlorinated water for your toads because they have really sensitive skin. So although they might not always want to drink the water, they will soak in it. And basically toads, like a lot of other amphibians, will absorb nutrients through their skin, which means they'd be absorbing the chlorine or chloramines in the water, and that's not good for them. You don't want that to happen. So basically what I just use water from the hose or tap water from the sink, and then I use dechlorinator. I also use this for my turtle and my bearded dragon, and it works just fine. It only takes a couple drops to dechlorinate like 5 gallons, so it's worth it, I'd say. Now that we've got our water dish in there, let's move on to a hide. I got this little fake half log as a hide because she can fit underneath and burrow in there, and she might be able to squeeze through this hole, I'm not sure. She definitely couldn't fit through that one, but it's just for looks, I guess. I think I'll set it over here. Now I'm gonna add some other decorations. These are just from my maple tree because we were trimming it earlier, and lots of wood fell off. So I just grabbed these and thought, hey, it'd be perfect for the toad's enclosure. Now when you're using real wood like this, you're gonna want to keep an eye on it because it can mold after a while in a humid environment. So if it molds, either get rid of it, toss it, or clean it off until the mold goes away, but you really don't want mold in your enclosure. So I'm just gonna set this over here. And I think I want to turn this into like a little tree stump. Make sure to leave enough room so that your toad can hop around. And because you don't want to fill it too full with decorations and plants or whatever. There we go, that's it for decorations. Next up, I'm going to get some moss because that also helps keep the humidity in it. And they like to just crawl around in it. You can either get fake moss, they sell it at most pet stores, or you can grab real moss, and I've got real moss in my front yard, so I'm just going to go ahead and get some of that. So I got some moss in a bucket, and let's just add it to the enclosure. It's like during the summer, so it looks real pretty now. It's all flowering and some of it's red. You can't even see it. Ta-da! Focus. Ta-da! Yeah, I'll just kind of burrow it under the normal substrate because it's on like sort of clay, I think it is. So it should stay there pretty easily. I just need to bury it a little bit. And I've got a lot of this, so let's just put it all over. You don't want to cover all the available space with moss because they're not gonna be wanting to walk on moss 100% of the time, I don't think. But you can get like some of the edges and stuff. What I'm gonna do, I have an idea. I think I'm just gonna leave like a clearing in the middle that's clear of any decorations or moss. It's just so that they've got some space to run around. When I put the moss right next to the wood, it looks really nice actually. It like goes along with it. I can almost make it look like the moss is just growing on the wood. Kinda liking this stuff. I don't want to fill it up too much though. Actually, this will be plenty of moss. I don't want to take up all the space. And there we go. We're almost done. So here's a quick look at what the terrarium is looking like so far. Now all we need is some water in the water dish, and also I'm just going to pour some water over the entire substrate just to keep it nice and humid, and also water the moss to keep it alive, obviously. And you'll want to rehydrate everything every so often when you start to see it dry out. And obviously the water dish is going to have to be replaced, and if it gets dirty, like some of the substrate gets in there, just replace it. But yeah, always remember to use dechlorinated water. Because toads, like for us humans, we're such big creatures that a little chlorine doesn't bother us. But for a little toad, they absorb things through their skin, right? So them touching the chlorinated water is like them drinking it. And they're such small animals, it's very toxic to them. I mean, it's not like super toxic, but it could make your toad sick and it can irritate them. Just like when you're in like a middle school swimming pool and you get like rashes and stuff. No, that's only happened to me. Oh, okay. Hooray, the flies have finally left the garage, but now there's a wasp. So that's better on the noise, but where'd it go? Anyway, I'm just gonna hydrate the whole enclosure with this glass, and you can't see it because it's off camera, but I fill up a 5-gallon bucket full of water from the hose and then just add some drops of the dechlorinator to it, the water conditioner, and I use it for my turtle almost every day to feed them in. So yeah, I'll just get some of that. Make sure to get underneath the decorations too. You don't want too much water though, because again, it would make mold appear faster, and you also don't want it just too wet, because believe it or not, the humidity can probably be too high, because you don't want your toes like swimming all the time. I'm gonna fill up the water dish once I get this up to my room so I don't spill it on the way up there, but I'm gonna soak everything else right now. And yeah, again, make sure to get underneath the decorations. There, now everything feels nice and moist. I'm sure the toads will appreciate that. And now all we have to do is introduce our toad. But first, I got some springtails because normally you'd have to replace the substrate every month or so to get rid of urine and waste from the toad. But I bought some springtails and I'm gonna put them in here and see if they can be my little cleanup crew. And I still will probably have to replace the substrate, but if they get enough and they get a population growing, it should reduce the amount of waste from the toad that lingers in here. But even if you do get springtails, you still need to watch for mold. I can't talk. Mold and other stuff that's very specific of you, Kai. Yeah. Now these guys are so tiny. Hopefully they don't cause an infestation in my house. I assume that they will stay in the enclosure and try it and won't attempt to escape because it's humid in here. It's the perfect weather conditions and environment for them, and there's no reason for them to go to a drier, the outside world without as much stuff to eat. So they should just stay in here because they have no reason to escape. And they die without enough humidity. But yeah, I've never used springtails before. I'm new to this, so I guess you just spread them around and they'll start a population after a while, I guess. Now I'm putting these in first, so I'm gonna give these guys some time to get settled and go and hide, do whatever, before I let the toad in, just in case that they're so tiny, I don't think she would eat them, but just in case, we don't want these to go to waste. So yeah, let these guys get settled, and I don't think there's any left in here. Okay, I think that's all. Now, like I said, I'll just give these guys some time, and then you can meet the toad.
2,000 years later.
I saw a few springtails left in the container, so I actually decided to just leave it in upside down so the rest of them could go out. So now that we have every single springtail in the enclosure, now it's time to move on. Because there's one thing that I almost forgot. It's not really a necessity, but I'm gonna decide to use it anyway, and that is dead leaves. There are 3 benefits of using leaves in your enclosure. Number 1, it makes it look nicer and more natural. Number 2, it helps keep humidity in the substrate to keep it nice and humid and a good climate for your toad. And last one, number 3, it provides us nice hiding places for the toads to go under, because sometimes they like to snuggle up underneath the leaf. Well, I got some leaves here. They're pretty green still, but they'll dry up soon enough. I would recommend using leaves from a tree that's native to where your toad is from. And since my toad is native to my garden, and my oak tree is native to my garden, I think it's gonna be just fine. I'm trying not to cover the moss too much so that the moss can still get light, even though it won't be getting a whole lot of light. Moss can do really well with barely any light. Alright, that's looking good. So here's a quick glance at the complete setup. Now that everything is complete, I can now go and introduce my toad. Alright, drum roll please. And yeah, Hermione. You can probably barely see her. There we go. Yep, that's her. So let's see how she enjoys it. Go on. Come on. Up there you go. Yay. Yeah, this will be a big upgrade for her because for most of the day she's just been sitting in the bucket. Because I don't have enough time to let her go hop around in the grass and look after her so she doesn't escape and defend her from cats all at the same time. So yeah, she'll be happy to be in here. Perfect environment for her. And I could talk more about Toads and Hermione specifically. However, this video was planned to be just about setting up her enclosure and not about the Toad herself. So I might make another video about Hermione in the future, but that'll be a separate thing. No promises though. Hey guys, it's Future Me here because I forgot to address one of the most important things when it comes to taking care of reptiles and amphibians, and that is heating and lighting. Now here's where it gets real nice and simple when it comes to setting up American toad enclosures, because short answer, they don't need them. Well, kind of. Let me be more specific. So when it comes to taking care of most herps, such as, let's say, turtles for example, they need UVB light to bask in. But these guys on the other hand are nocturnal, so they won't bask and they don't need any special expensive light. However, this doesn't mean that you can just throw your toad in a dark closet, because they still need enough light to keep their internal day and night clock going. And natural light should suffice as long as you have a well-lit room or you keep them near a window. Now moving on to heating. Now unlike most other pets, American toads don't need any excessive heating and room temperature should work just fine. Assuming your room temperature is around 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit, give or take a few degrees. It can fluctuate a little bit so long as huge changes aren't occurring, because that can understandably stress them out a little bit. Now that we've covered both heat and light, I'm gonna send you on back to this moron. Well, anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please consider subscribing and get ready to watch whatever I film for the outro. So, bye.